In the first year of our marriage, Regina never let me touch her. Yet on the day her unforgettable first love returned, she got pregnant. I wasn't angry. I kept buying her jewelry, handbags, and when she cried from morning sickness, I gently wiped away her tears with my fingertips. Everyone said that I must be truly in love this time, but I just smiled and turned to comment under the post, "How powerful is the allure of an unforgettable first love? Too powerful. That's why I married her sister. I wanted to see her sister, who has the same twin face, have everything, then end up with nothing." Chapter 1. If I count it up, Regina and I have been married for a year. The day Francis returned home was exactly our first wedding anniversary. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the hotel not far away, coldly watching Regina and Francis passionately kissing at the Central Plaza's musical fountain. Entwined, deep, lost in their feelings. The cigarette in my hand burned slowly until it accidentally scorched my fingers. The cigarette butt fell, leaving a small burn hole in the carpet. That night, Regina didn't come home, not even bothering to give me an explanation. It wasn't until the middle of the night that Francis sent me a photo. It was Regina, asleep on the hotel's white bed sheets, her face in profile, especially showing the red birthmark at the corner of her eye, my favorite spot, and Francis did it to taunt me. "Look, your wife of 1 year." I just had to beckon, and she'd end up in my bed. "Ethan, I've been gone for a year, and you still haven't won Gina's heart. What a loser." But who said I ever wanted Regina's heart? Chapter 2. The next morning, rumors of Regina cheating with her ex-lover were all over the place. It even caused the stocks of the Lee and He families to plummet. Lee's father was so furious he slapped Regina. The moment I arrived, Lee's father hurriedly invited me to sit and personally poured me tea. "Ethan, don't take it to heart. These are just baseless rumors. None of it's true. You've been married to Gina for a year. You should know her character." I didn't answer, just stared at Regina, but she still didn't show me any kindness, scoffing coldly. "Ethan, I've told you before, I don't like you. Our year of marriage has been in name only. Let's get divorced." I shook my head slightly. "No," Regina sneered. "They all say you're my simp, and they're not wrong. We've slept in separate rooms for a year, and now I've cheated, and you still refuse to divorce me. Ethan, do you really love me that much?" Seeing my face darken, Lee's father gave Regina another harsh slap. "Stop talking nonsense. You need to understand what a blessing it is for you to marry President Koo. How good he is to you. Don't you see that?" Regina froze, covering her face, tears starting to fall. She looked at me with a hint of guilt. I know. I was shaken at first, but Francis is back. He's back. No matter how good anyone else is, it doesn't compare. Perhaps Regina was once moved by my affection, my indulgence, the endless jewels, but fleeting attraction still couldn't beat the years of love she had before. Francis always has priority with Regina. I sighed, stood up, and pulled Regina down to sit beside me, gently tidied her messy hair. "Regina, I still don't want a divorce. Maybe I was too gentle, making it too easy for people to lose themselves." Regina nodded almost involuntarily. "Ethan, don't be so good to me. I'll feel guilty." I smiled gently. "You don't need to feel guilty, Regina. Just wait a little longer. Give me a bit more time." Chapter 3. That day when I got home, Regina rarely showed me a kind face. She brought me a midnight snack, softly saying, "Ethan, you didn't have dinner. Eat something. It's not good for your stomach if you don't." The moment Regina closed the bedroom door, her figure overlapped with the girl in my memories. I stared at the photo on my phone, the girl in a light yellow dress, holding vivid red roses, her eyes smiling into crescents, with a pink diamond ring on her slender finger extended toward the camera. I still remember it clearly. At that time, she proudly lifted her chin and asked, "Ethan, do I look good?" Coconut shadows by the sea, blue waters, and the faint ocean breeze blowing through the girl's hair. She walked on the beach, one step at a time, and looked back at me again and again. "Beautiful. You are always the most beautiful in my eyes." The sound of thunder outside the window brought my drifting thoughts back. The hot midnight snack had somehow turned cold. I dumped it into the trash and turned to head into the bathroom. Time had passed, but the one who couldn't move on was the one who suffered the most. Some things are irreplaceable. Ethan, you should have understood this long ago. Chapter 4. After that day, Regina indeed behaved herself for 2 days. She stayed at home and made dinner for me for 2 nights. Unfortunately, it only lasted 2 days. On the 3rd day, she was back trending with Francis. This time, they attended an auction together. Francis spent millions to buy a diamond necklace, putting it around Regina's slender white neck in front of everyone. As they came out, a light drizzle began to fall, and Francis held a transparent umbrella, pulling Regina tightly into his arms. I have to admit, the photos captured were very atmospheric, the two of them walking in the rain, deeply in love, like the leads in an idol drama. If they weren't Regina and Francis, I might have genuinely praised them as a perfect match. Unfortunately, Regina is my wife. Cheating is a scandal, no matter who it happens to. Lee's and his stocks fell again. Alongside them, a third-tier actress, undeniably beautiful, also hit the trending topics. Someone with ulterior motives had dug up her past relationship with Francis. Regina was infuriated and called Francis to question him, only to receive his cold response. "You're married. What right do you have to call me out for fooling around?" Regina, don't forget, you were the one who let go first. You were the one who married Ethan for the Lee family. Regina cried out. Francis, you can't do this to me. I've stayed loyal to you for this whole year. You can't betray me. Well, if I weren't involved, I'd think I was watching some tragic love TV drama. Regina called me while I was drinking at a bar. On the other end of the phone, her voice was thick with drunkenness and sobs. "Ethan, come pick me up and take me home." By the time I arrived, the table was already littered with empty bottles. It was clear that Francis's infidelity had hurt Regina badly, so badly she needed to drown herself in alcohol to numb the pain. The last time Regina got drunk was on our engagement day. At the engagement party, Regina had no trace of joy, her face downcast. Even her usual obsession with beauty showing no effort in her makeup. She stood beside me in a red cheongsam, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, defeated and helpless. That night, she drank heavily and ended up drunk. She brought a bottle to my front door, smashing it at my feet. The bottle shattered, glass shards cutting my ankle. With red, tear-filled eyes, Regina sobbed and shouted at me, "Ethan, you bastard, you're bullying me. I don't like you, not at all. I don't want to marry you. Why can't I be with the one I love?" It was the first time the high and mighty princess had cried out without any image to maintain, even collapsing at the gate of my villa, yelling for a long time. It wasn't until Lee's mother arrived, coaxing and dragging her away, that the drunken Regina was bundled into the car. The car left, leaving me with a slowly fading figure. I stared for a long time, long enough for my heartbeat to skip a beat. Yeah, I also want to ask, why can't I be with the one I love? Chapter 5. I brought Regina back home. In the year we've been married, we've always slept in separate rooms. On our wedding day, Regina made it clear that she'd never share a bed with me. Otherwise, she'd accuse me of rape. What a steadfast love she had. I didn't say much, but this time, Regina was different. She held onto my hand and wouldn't let go. I thought it was because she was heartbroken about Francis having another woman. Regina grasped my fingertips, her voice very soft. "Ethan, don't go. Don't leave me alone." As she spoke, Regina used slight force, pulling me down to sit beside her. Her eyes were unfocused, her words intermittent. "Ethan, you're the only one who's good to me. Over this past year, everything you've done for me, I know it. Ethan, I was wrong before. I didn't cherish such a good husband. Kept clinging to that scumbag." Sob. "Ethan, let's really be together. I'll try my best to be a good wife." Regina slipped her hands under my shirt and leaned in to kiss me. I slightly turned my cheek, avoiding her kiss. "You've had too much. Get some rest." I helped Regina onto the bed, coaxing her to sleep. Sleeping Regina looked very obedient. Like a docile kitten, she seemed to be having a nightmare, letting out soft whimpering sounds, her hand tightly holding onto mine. Her long eyelashes fluttered slightly, making the red mole at the corner of her eye even more captivating. In that moment of daze, I felt as if I was back 10 years ago. Back then, a delicate girl also shed tears like this, tears streaming past her red mole. "Ethan, will you protect me forever?" The young boy held the girl tightly, answering resolutely, I will protect you forever." That was the promise between us, a promise I would keep for my whole life. Chapter 6. After that night, the relationship between Regina and I subtly changed. She seemed to have really decided to settle down and be Mrs. Koo. She made me breakfast every day, sat on the living room couch waiting for me to get home, even thoughtfully ran a hot bath. Many times, she'd knock on my door at night wearing a sexy silk nightgown. I never opened the door, because I saw Regina hang up on Francis's calls, time and again, from firm to hesitant. On my birthday, Regina made plenty of preparations. Flowers, gifts, cake, everything was there. Regina lit the candles for me. "Ethan, happy birthday. Make a wish." I stared at the flickering candles, about to speak, but Regina's phone rang. It was Francis. Regina hesitated, hung up, but it rang again, and she answered. On the other end, Francis's drunken voice came through. "Gina, don't leave me. You've already left me once. Are you going to leave me again?" "Gina, the wind by the river. It's so cold." Regina panicked, and she didn't care about me anymore. She didn't even glance at me as she grabbed a coat and rushed out. The candles on the cake still flickered. I closed my eyes and sincerely made a wish, blowing out the candles. My heart skipped a beat. My wish was to be with the one I loved. Chapter 7. That night, I sat on the balcony, gazing at the stars twinkling in the night sky. Perhaps it was the alcohol, Or maybe I was just lost in thought. I felt like I was back in the past. The first time I met her, I was 12 when I first saw her. Because of my premature birth, I was always in poor health, thin and small, and because I looked fair, like a little girl, I was often bullied by classmates. They called me androgynous, put caterpillars in my desk, and laughed at my shocked reaction. See, I told you Ethan is a girl. Only girls are afraid of caterpillars. Ha ha ha. My parents were always busy with work and had little time for me, so I didn't dare fight back, and I hid in a corner crying, until a small figure stood in front of me, throwing the caterpillar back at the classmate who was teasing me. Picking on people, what kind of man are you? If you bully Ethan again, I'll tell the teacher. The classmates didn't care about her, but they were afraid because she was a top student, the teacher's favorite. They had to back off, but they still mocked me. Ha ha ha. Ethan, how pathetic, you need a little girl to protect you. You two should be sisters. Ha ha ha. Careless words in childhood can hurt a young heart deeply, but a kind word can also make a young boy stand tall. The little girl patted my head comfortingly. Don't be afraid, I'll protect you from now on. Ethan, one day you'll be a real man. Those words changed my life. I started running, biking, exercising with the help of the family doctor, gradually growing stronger. I was no longer the frail little boy, because I too had someone I wanted to protect for the rest of my life. Chapter 8. Regina started leaving early and coming home late again. Sometimes not coming home at all. I didn't question her, nor did I blame her. I'd gotten used to it over the past year. In the empty villa, it was only me, lonely, but I'd long gotten used to it. I threw myself into work completely, not just at Coup Corporation but also helping Lee Corporation secure many deals with us. Every time Mr. Lee signed a contract, he'd sigh repeatedly, his words full of regret about not raising his daughter properly, thus letting me down. I'd always just smile faintly, never blaming him too much. Regina was the most beloved daughter of the Lee family, pampered to the extreme. If she wanted the moon, Mr. Lee would find a way to buy naming rights for a star and name it after her. So when Regina wanted to marry into the He family, which was a tier below the Lee family, Mr. Lee agreed. However, Lee Corporation had a critical deal with Coup Corporation then, so Mr. Lee had to sacrifice Regina's love. He felt indebted to Regina, so as long as I didn't get angry, Mr. Lee turned a blind eye to her actions, and my patience, in Mr. Lee's eyes, only showed how deeply I loved Regina. He probably thought that with Regina keeping me hooked, one day, Lee Corporation might grow, even swallow Coup Corporation. I could understand his thinking if I were truly a fool blinded by love. Mr. Lee, a pleasure doing business. I put away the contract signed by Mr. Lee, opening a bottle of champagne as well. Mr. Lee raised his glass happily, clinking it with mine. Ethan, the luckiest thing in my life is having you as a son-in-law. I drained my champagne glass in one gulp, my voice especially sincere. Being able to marry your daughter is the greatest blessing of my life. Mr. Lee paused, sighed again deeply. But I knew his sighs weren't for my pain or worries. He just felt powerless about Regina's reckless actions. Chapter 9. I saw Regina again over a month later. That day, she cooked a not-so-great dinner at home. Red wine, candles, it looked warm and romantic. But I knew that Regina wasn't doing this to make up with me. She was pregnant. It went without saying, it was Francis's child. This elaborate setup was for her to discuss divorce with me. Sometimes, I really couldn't understand this woman. Why arrange such a scene just to talk about divorce? Anyone who didn't know better would think it was our wedding anniversary. Regina sat quietly at the side, watching as I finished the steak on my plate bite by bite. She was surprisingly patient, waiting until I had finished dinner to finally speak. Ethan, I'm sorry, our marriage has reached its end. Then, she presented me with a divorce agreement. Perhaps because she was pregnant, Regina felt guilty toward me and didn't want to jeopardize the cooperation between Coup Corporation and Lee Corporation. The divorce agreement was practically her leaving with nothing. But it didn't make much difference. When she married me, I didn't ask for anything either. I held the pen but didn't sign my name right away. Looking up at the beautiful, alluring woman in front of me, I spoke. Regina, are you sure Francis loves you and only you forever? Apparently, Regina hadn't expected me to ask that. She stared at me blankly for a long time, until a flicker of guilt appeared in her eyes, and she looked away. Francis loves me. I know he does. He only loves me. Ethan, stop playing games. Sign it, and let's part on good terms. This time, I didn't hesitate and quickly signed my name. With the final stroke, I completely ended the brief and bizarre marriage between Regina and me. When Regina took the divorce agreement, she stared at my signature for a long time. Ethan, you don't seem sad at all. I nodded calmly. Because I don't love you. Regina froze, her expression shifting from disbelief to realization. And finally, panic and confusion. Tears fell from Regina's eyes, and she frantically tried to leave, but I gripped her wrist tightly. I smiled, staring straight into her eyes. Regina, we can't part on good terms. Chapter 10. I heard that Lee Corporation and He Corporation had started a collaboration. If the project succeeded, the two families might surpass Koo Corporation. Because of this, Regina and Francis's wedding was hastily prepared. When the invitation arrived, I was watching a video of Regina leaning against Francis's shoulder, a face full of happiness as she announced her wedding. A surge of anger rose from my chest. I smashed the tablet playing the video, calming myself only by looking at the photo of the girl in my phone. Selena, you were supposed to be the one to find happiness. Don't worry, I'll make them pay. The girl I remembered had never been Regina. The one I loved wasn't Regina. The girl I loved was named Selena. She was Regina's twin sister. They looked about 70 to 80% alike, especially with the red mole at the corner of their eyes. Both sisters had it. I admit that when I looked at the face similar to Selena's, it sometimes comforted my grief for losing her. But over time, I became increasingly clear, Regina was not Selena, and she could never replace Selena. My Selena was innocent, beautiful, with a smile as gentle as the moon at night. She was warmth itself, a ray of light that shone on me. But Regina wasn't. In the Lee family, Selena wasn't as favored as Regina. When Mrs. Lee gave birth to Regina, everything went smoothly. But with Selena, it was a difficult birth that almost cost her life. So Mrs. Lee resented Selena and favored Regina. Mr. Lee followed suit. After Selena protected me, we became each other's only friends, growing up and studying together, eventually confessing our feelings. We were supposed to get married, but on the day I successfully proposed, Selena died. Mr. and Mrs. Lee said it was an accidental fall, but I didn't believe it. My Selena was like a pear blossom in a storm, resilient and careful. Moreover, Selena's body didn't have the engagement ring I had given her, a valuable pink diamond ring. I checked all her belongings and still couldn't find the ring. Yet, I happened to see Regina wearing a pink diamond necklace. Cherry blossom-colored pink diamonds were rare. I was sure that was the one I had set into Selena's engagement ring. On Regina and Francis's wedding day, I didn't attend, because, you see, chaos would arrive on its own. To recover the Lee and He family's stock prices, which had plummeted due to Regina and Francis's affair, Mr. Lee invited many media outlets to the wedding. He intended for them to write favorable stories to redeem the disgraced couple. In total, there were over 20 media outlets. I sat in my office, remotely watching the wedding unfold step by step, and I felt a subtle sense of satisfaction. Regina, Francis, just wait. You'll remember this wedding forever. It's my carefully prepared gift for you, a wedding of death. Chapter 11. After a year of painstaking investigation, I finally uncovered the truth behind Selena's fall. It must have been heaven taking pity. At a park outside the Lee family villa, a young man was flying a drone, and he happened to record the entire crime committed by Regina and Francis. It took me watching surveillance footage around the Lee family villa for a month to find such a precious piece of evidence. Unfortunately, by the time I found the boy's address and rushed to his home, he had already gone abroad for his studies. His parents were highly wary of my sudden appearance, resolutely refusing to disclose his whereabouts. There was no other choice. It took a lot more time before I found out he was studying in Germany. That day, I took the nearest flight to Germany, found the boy. When I showed him Selena's picture, he dodged it anxiously, refusing to admit he had ever seen her. I stayed at his school for half a month, going to find him every day, pleading with him to give me a sliver of hope. Perhaps it was my unkempt beard, the look of despair on my face that stirred his sympathy. He finally sent me the drone footage. That day, he really did record a video. Although it was taken from afar and the faces weren't too clear, the sequence of events could still be vaguely seen. By then, it had already been 3 months since Selena fell. I watched that video all night. I finally knew the entire truth. I knew why my Selena had fallen on the day she accepted my proposal. She wasn't pushed. Chapter 12. The wedding officially began. Regina wore a fluffy white wedding dress, an exquisite crown, and held an expensive lily-of-the-valley bouquet, walking slowly towards Francis with Mr. Lee's help. And Francis stood in the center of the stage, smiling tenderly. A truly well-matched couple. They looked at each other with intense love in their eyes. In front of parents, friends, and countless flashing cameras, they made a lifelong vow to each other, for richer or for poorer, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, to love and cherish forever. Francis held a diamond ring the size of a pigeon egg, slowly trying to slip it onto Regina's finger, but he couldn't put it on. Chaos began at the scene. Everyone started murmuring. The looks aimed at the couple on stage turned disdainful and resentful. One bold reporter handed Regina and Francis a video. On the video, on a villa rooftop, a man pinned a girl in a pale yellow dress down, trying to force himself on her despite her struggle. Then another girl in a red dress rushed over, dragged the man off, and slapped the girl in yellow hard. You couldn't hear what the three were saying in the video. All you could see was the girl in the red dress venting her fury at the girl in yellow, slapping, pulling her hair, shoving her. Meanwhile, the men leisurely sat in a rattan chair nearby, watching the drama unfold with amusement. Then the girl in red tried to grab something, but the girl in yellow held on tight, which enraged the red-dressed girl. She picked up a garden hoe from a flower bed and struck the back of the yellow-dressed girl's head hard. The girl in yellow collapsed instantly. Even the bystanding men stood up in shock, hurriedly checking her pulse. They panicked for a while, then pushed the girl in yellow off the rooftop. Someone gasped, "Ah, it looks like the Lee family villa. They have a lot of flowers on the villa rooftop." Another person agreed, "Yes, yes, Mrs. Lee loves planting flowers." And the girl in the video, "It looks like Regina. And that man, he looks a lot like Francis." Someone else had a sudden realization. "Right, I remember. The Lee family has another daughter. She fell from a building over a year ago." There was much discussion among the crowd below, and on stage, Regina and Francis turned pale. The ring in Francis's hand fell to the ground. Regina nervously grabbed Francis's hand, stammering in explanation, "No, it's not like that. It wasn't me. Selena fell accidentally. It had nothing to do with me." "Fran, say something. Help me explain." Under the flashing lights of reporters, with questions thrown at her, Regina fainted. The bouquet scattered, the crown fell, and the white wedding dress was stained. A wedding turned into a farce. I closed the video with satisfaction, feeling, for once, the pleasure of a long-awaited revenge. "Regina, I told you before, we wouldn't part on good terms. I want you to wish you were dead." Chapter 13. After that chaos, Regina lost the baby. Standing at the hospital room door, I could clearly hear Regina and Francis arguing inside. The sound of things being smashed echoed through the entire hallway, because Francis was trending again. This time, multiple women jointly accused Francis of workplace sexual harassment and drugging women. Leading the accusations was the third-tier actress whose relationship with Francis had made headlines before. In the video, the actress appeared with her makeup removed. She recounted the incident in a clear and organized way, though she trembled as she spoke, her eyes turning red. She met Francis at a friend's gathering, but she only wanted to focus on acting and didn't want to get involved with the wealthy. Francis repeatedly tried to tempt her with money, but the girl refused each time. So he drugged her drink. She woke up in Francis's arms and nearly committed suicide. Francis, not wanting things to escalate that far, hypocritically coaxed her, offering money and resources while threatening her, telling her that his family was rich and powerful, and if anything happened, she'd be the one to suffer. Helpless, the girl accepted everything, agreed to be his mistress, but secretly began collecting evidence of Francis's abuse of women. What she found was far worse than she imagined. Francis had a deeply promiscuous nature. Besides his entanglement with Regina, he kept affairs with many other women. He even harassed pretty female employees in his company, both verbally and physically. Francis was rotten to the core. Regina cried as she blamed Francis. "Francis, you forgot what you promised me. You said you'd never fool around with other women again. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have done that to Selena." Francis was silent for a moment, then spoke impatiently. "You blame me. You were the one who did it." "Regina, do you realize how serious this is? Now both our families, both companies are surrounded by reporters. Corporation stocks have hit rock bottom. I got chewed out by my old man. I asked a lawyer. He said the video doesn't show our faces clearly, and the audio isn't clear either. As long as we deny it, the police can't do anything. Even if they find out it's us, we'll just blame everything on Selena. Say she seduced me and stole from you, and you accidentally hurt her, but never admit it was intentional. Don't worry too much. Your dad and my dad will handle it. Just like a year ago. We'll keep everyone fooled." After a moment, Regina nodded, sobbing quietly as she leaned against Francis. "Fran, I'm scared. It's all that damn Selena's fault. Even after dying, she won't let us live in peace." Francis fell silent again. "There are too many reporters outside. We should find a place to lay low until my dad and your dad handle this." Regina agreed and got up to change, disregarding her still weak body from the recent miscarriage. I left before they opened the hospital room door. Regina. "Francis, thank you for walking right into the trap. I'll make sure you regret thinking your little tricks were clever." Chapter 14. When I arrived at the Lee family home, Mr. Lee was busy discussing countermeasures with Mr. He. The Lee villa was filled with top-tier lawyers in the industry. When Mr. Lee saw me, it was as if he had found a lifeline. He poured tea for me personally, speaking in an unusually humble tone. "Ethan, son." Realizing I was no longer married to Regina, Mr. Lee paused and corrected himself. "This old man knows you have wide connections. Surely you have a way to save Gina, don't you? After all, you were married for a year, and I truly hoped you two would grow old together. But Gina was immature, and she let you down. But, considering your year of marriage, can you think of a way to save Gina? She's innocent." I stared at Mr. Lee's fawning face, Feeling nothing but disgust, I gave a faint laugh. What price are you willing to pay to save Regina? Mr. Lee seemed taken aback by my question, momentarily stunned. Then he smiled, as if he had suddenly understood. Ethan, as long as you save Gina, I'm willing to give anything. I guessed Mr. Lee thought I wanted to remarry Regina. After all, in his eyes, I was madly in love with Regina, unable to extricate myself. I let out a cold laugh. If you had treated Lena like this back then, she wouldn't have died with regrets. Regina wouldn't be in the mess she is now either. In the end, you were the one who ruined your precious daughter. This time, Mr. Lee was genuinely stunned. He exchanged glances with Mr. He. Mr. He, as an outsider, saw things more clearly than Mr. Lee. It was you. You're the one who posted the video online. You're the one who arranged for someone at the wedding to make everyone think the people in the video were Regina and Francis. Mr. He spelled it out, and Mr. Lee finally understood. He stared at me in disbelief. Why? Why would you do this? Didn't you love Gina? How could you bear to harm her like this? Only now did I realize, Mr. Lee was a fool. Even at this point, when even Mr. He understood, Mr. Lee was still lost in his delusion of my supposed love. Mr. He rolled his eyes at Mr. Lee, gritting his teeth. Are you stupid? Ethan loved your dead daughter. He's done all of this to avenge Selena. Mr. Lee was stunned again, stumbling backward, collapsing onto the sofa. Mr. He then put on a sycophantic smile, bowing as he pleaded with me. Mr. Koo, Francis had nothing to do with this. It was all Regina's doing. Please, be generous and let Francis go. I shook my head lightly. No, Mr. He. Francis was an accomplice. You could even say he was the root cause. It was because he tried to assault Lena that Regina acted out of jealousy and harmed her. Both Francis and Regina are guilty. Neither of them will escape. I stood up, looking at Mr. Lee slumped on the side. Suddenly, I realized the question I always wanted to ask on Selena's behalf no longer needed to be voiced. We'd known the answer all along. The Lee parents simply didn't love Selena, so they didn't care about her, didn't understand her, didn't know who she was dating, and were indifferent to her death. There was no heart-wrenching reason, they just didn't love her. It was that simple. As I turned to leave and reached the door, Mr. Lee suddenly shouted after me, Ethan, you can't hurt Gina. Mr. He also shouted threats. Don't think that just because Koo Corporation is big, you can do whatever you want. Ethan, you won't succeed. The He and Lee families aren't necessarily any less than Koo Corporation. I paused, then turned back, sneering at the two of them. Mr. He, Mr. Lee, when you can't protect yourselves, why waste your efforts? Without caring about their roars and curses behind me, I walked away faster. Just as I got into my car, I saw people from the Bureau of Commercial Crimes arrive and head straight into the Lee villa. Not long after, both Mr. Lee and Mr. He were taken away in police cars. This, too, was a gift for Regina and Francis. Gathering all that evidence wasn't easy. Their actions had always been protected and covered up by their parents. Especially the Lee parents, they were also partly responsible for Selena's death. I wasn't going to let a single one of them off the hook. Chapter 15. My assistant glanced at me in the rearview mirror, tentatively speaking. Boss. To the office. I stared at my reflection in the car window and laughed. To the florist. I want to buy some flowers. For Selena. I hadn't visited her in a long time. I wondered if she was mad at me. I placed Selena's favorite sunflowers in front of her grave. Sitting on the ground, I opened a can of beer. Lena, I'm sorry. I've been busy lately and haven't had time to visit you. You must miss me. Right, I miss you too. Lena, don't worry. It's almost over. Those who hurt you will pay the price. I spoke intermittently for a long time, not sure if she could hear me. Out of nowhere, a butterfly flew in circles around me, then landed on Selena's photo on the tombstone. I think she heard me. What would she say? She'd say, Ethan, stop drinking. It's bad for your health. When I'm here to take care of you, you need to listen to me. Ethan, don't be sad for me. I want you to always be happy. Ethan, thank you for protecting me. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Ethan, I like you a lot. As the butterfly flew away, my hand gently stroked the smiling girl in the photo. Lena, I like you a lot. I sat by Selena's grave all night, until the dawn of a new day arrived, and I reluctantly left. Chapter 16. I didn't go to the office, nor did I go home. I drove alone, to a deserted mountain. After several turns, I parked outside a rundown house. Standing outside, I smoked 3 cigars in a row, the air filled with the bitter scent of tobacco. Only after the third one did I push open the door. The moment Francis heard someone arrive, he struggled excitedly. Who are you? Why did you kidnap us? How much money do you want? We'll give it to you. Regina added. Yes, just don't hurt us. We'll pay whatever it takes. My father loves me, he'll pay for sure. I slowly removed their blindfolds, leisurely sitting in the chair opposite them, enjoying their stunned expressions. Maybe it had been too long since they'd seen daylight. Francis and Regina squinted for a long time before they could see me clearly. You. Francis froze. Ethan, why did you kidnap us? Suddenly, I realized that Francis probably didn't know about my past with Selina, so it wasn't surprising that he didn't understand. Since that conversation on the day of the divorce, Regina had understood everything, right from the start. I had never loved her. I had merely treated her as Selina's substitute. Keeping her around was just to make her fall in love without getting it in return. To make her suffer the pain of longing day after day. Ethan, are you planning to kill us? Hearing Regina's words, Francis was bewildered. What? In a situation like this, Regina had no time to explain to Francis, crying and shouting instead. Ethan, if you kill us, you'll end up in prison too. My father won't let you off. Unknowingly, I had lit another cigar. It seemed that after Selina passed away, I had fallen in love with smoking, one cigar after another, immersing myself in it, but this time, the cigar that I only took 2 puffs of tasted unbearably bitter. I casually stubbed it out on Regina's leg. Regina, do you think I care? Besides, your father can't help you anymore, they can't even protect themselves. Maybe my deranged demeanor scared Regina thoroughly. She didn't even have the strength to cry out in pain from the burn, instead pleading tearfully. Ethan, Selina is dead. She's already dead. You loved her, didn't you? I'm her twin. We look so much alike. I can take her place. Stay with you. I promise I'll behave. At this point, Francis also understood. He crawled towards me, pleading. Ethan, Mr. Koo, Selina's death had nothing to do with me. Please let me go. Suddenly, an evil idea formed in my mind. I nodded thoughtfully. Only one of you can live. So, how will you decide? Regina and Francis exchanged a glance, their eyes both lighting up. Regina spoke first. Fran, you said you'd love me forever. You'll choose to let me live, right? At that moment, Francis dropped all pretense and, without hesitation, shoved Regina to the ground. Why should I? Regina, you said you loved me, then die for me. Besides, Selina's death was your doing, not mine. I got caught up because of you. Seeing the men she once loved change his tune, Regina froze on the ground, tears streaming uncontrollably. But, Francis, it was because you wanted to assault Selina that I acted against her. It was because I loved you so much. How could you do this to me? From their back and forth, I pieced together what had really happened when Selina fell. It turned out, I was also part of the reason for Selina's death. Chapter 17. Growing up, the Lee parents had never cared about Selina, treating her with emotional neglect. In contrast, they pampered their older daughter Regina, caring for her meticulously and indulging her in everything, including mistreating Selina. The day I proposed to Selina, we were both so happy, but after the joy, Selina became melancholic. Ethan, my parents don't like me very much. I don't know if they'll agree to me being with you. At that time, I just squeezed Selina's cheek and comforted her. Being able to marry into the Koo family, your parents will definitely agree. That day, I dropped Selina off 1,000 meters away from the Lee villa, as usual, never expecting that it would be the last time I'd see her. After Selina returned home, she saw Francis was there and went to the rooftop alone. Although Mrs. Lee loved to say she enjoyed gardening, the truth was that Selina had done all the gardening work. The mother just admired the results. Selina was weeding the flower beds when Francis, with malicious intent, followed her up. Francis pinned Selina down. I've played with all kinds of women, but I haven't tried twins yet. Selina, be good, let me see if you're just as alluring as your sister. Selina couldn't break free and started shouting in panic. The shouting attracted Regina, who arrived and slapped Selina without even asking what was happening. She kept cursing. Selina, you little slut. How dare you seduce Francis? I'll beat you to death. No matter how Selina explained, Regina wouldn't listen. When Selina tried to defend herself, Regina noticed the pink diamond ring on Selina's hand. Regina had never seen such a good quality pink diamond and naturally wanted it for herself. Oh, Selina, which rich boy did you seduce to get such a good diamond ring? Give it to me, give it to me. It was the engagement ring I had given her, of course. Selina wouldn't give it up. Growing up, whenever Regina asked for something, Selina always gave it to her. This time, Selina's refusal enraged Regina. Desperate, Regina grabbed the garden hoe nearby and struck Selina on the back of her head. Selina collapsed instantly. Regina panicked and called for Francis. What do we do? After thinking for a moment, Francis decided to stage Selina's death as a fall. With the help of both sets of parents, the matter was quickly covered up. And just like that, Selina's young life came to an end. Chapter 18. I ignored their dog-eat-dog bickering and walked out. The little shabby house was indeed falling apart, but it was still a proper cage. It was the grave I had painstakingly found for them both. I locked all the doors and windows with iron locks and lit another cigar. The sound of them cursing and blaming each other gradually faded, turning into pitiful pleas for mercy. 100 million, 200 million, offering to be slaves, to be a stand-in lover. They really went all out to save their lives. But sadly, I didn't care about any of that. All I ever wanted was Selena. I smoked the cigar down to the end, threw it to the ground, and crushed it out hard. The lighter in my hand clicked open with a bang. Through the cracked window, I tossed it inside. In an instant, a raging fire erupted. I wondered if Regina and Francis noticed the multiple cans of gasoline I'd placed inside. The fire roared, and the two of them desperately tried to escape. At this moment, perhaps they felt the helplessness that Selena had felt, calling out to the heavens without response, calling the earth in vain. A true torment. I didn't leave. I needed to watch the house in front of me turn into a pile of ruins. I needed to witness Regina and Francis turn into two charred corpses. I was afraid they might escape by some stroke of luck. The fire burned for half a day before gradually dying down. It hadn't disappointed me. Regina and Francis had indeed become two blackened bodies. Chapter 19. I drove back to the villa and handed all the signed documents to my assistant. Call the police in 2 hours. The assistant's hand trembled as he held the documents. Boss, do we really have to do this? I smiled and walked out of the empty house without looking back. Luis, everything wrong done has to be paid for. I'm no exception. I drove to the cemetery and sat in front of Selena's grave. Again, I brought her favorite sunflowers, but this time, I didn't say anything, just kept pouring drinks. To be honest, I was a bit extravagant. Even at this point, I took the most expensive bottle of red wine from home. I drank until I was dizzy, then kissed the photo on the tombstone softly. Lena, I'm here to marry you. Wait for me. Extra. I knew about Ethan and Selena. They supported each other from a young age. Childhood sweethearts, a relationship to be envied. So when Miss Lee died suddenly, and Mr. Koo decided to marry Miss Lee's sister, I was shocked. I even thought Mr. Koo was grief-stricken, having lost his mind. Mr. Koo, should I make an appointment with a psychologist for you? I'll never forget the cold look Mr. Koo gave me. Later, while helping Mr. Koo prepare for the wedding, I gradually realized he didn't care about Regina. He was indifferent to the wedding. Even the suit he wore was one randomly picked from his closet. But when it came to Selena, Mr. Koo always handled things personally, never leaving anything to others, including me, his trusted assistant. On the day of the wedding with Regina, Mr. Koo went to the office late at night. He drank on the company's rooftop, scaring me out of my wits. Mr. Koo looked down from the 30th floor, over and over again, and suddenly asked me, Luis, what's the difference between falling from the 30th floor and falling from the 4th floor? I thought for a moment. Falling from the 30th floor guarantees death. From the 4th floor, you might survive but be disabled, or you might die. Mr. Koo was silent for a while, then drank half a bottle of wine. Falling from the 4th floor can kill you too. Selena is dead, and my heart died with her. At that moment, I suddenly understood. My boss had a huge secret inside, but I truly was Mr. Koo's confidant, and he trusted me. To live up to that trust, I worked hard to complete every task Mr. Koo assigned me, collecting surveillance footage near the Lee Villa, tracking down the drone boy's address, and finding out where he studied abroad. I also helped Mr. Koo contact the media, upload the video, and bribe the staff to guide guests at the wedding to identify the people in the footage as Regina and Francis. Later, after drugging Regina and Francis, Mr. Koo didn't want me involved anymore. Luis, you've done a lot for me. You don't need to wade through this mess with me. There will be other things I need you to do in the future. It wasn't until later that I realized what he wanted me to do. Mr. Koo had set up a charitable foundation, donating all of his company's profits, and I was put in charge of the project. After reporting to the police, I followed them to Selena's grave, but Mr. Koo was already dead. He had laced his wine with a large dose of sleeping pills. At that moment, I suddenly understood. Mr. Koo had planned everything long ago. At Mr. Koo's funeral, the chairman's wife cried so much she nearly fainted. The chairman sat silently beside her. I think they were very sad, but they still fulfilled their son's last wish, to bury him next to Selena. Later, I bought 2 bunches of sunflowers to visit them. It was a beautiful day, and there were 2 butterflies flying around. Mr. Koo, Miss Lee, how are you both?